Hi, and welcome back to College Admissions Essay Writing. I'm Zoe, your instructor. Before we begin, log into your account. As usual, we're going to get started by diving into the prompt for today. Go to the 5 things story prompt in Getting Started. Here's the prompt. List 5 things that are super important to you. Why do these things make your top 5 list? This prompt is from a Stanford supplemental essay, with a slight twist to help you hone your essay writing skills. The Stanford version of this prompt doesn't ask you to explain why you've included your list items, and it only gives you 50 words to work with. We're starting with a slightly longer version because it's important for you to know and be able to convey why the items on your list matter in order to come up with a compelling, shorter answer to this prompt and prompts like it. This prompt is intentionally broad and non-specific to give you a lot of freedom in how you choose to answer it. You might be thinking, what kind of things should I include? The word things is so general that I would probably tell you not to use it in your own writing. It lacks any specificity and it's hard to figure out what it means. But here, that's the point. Some things might be physical objects, but some might be beliefs, concepts, memories, values, experiences. So how do you start brainstorming with a prompt this broad? In our previous classes, we've tried a couple different brainstorming strategies that involved coming up with a list. One method was to start small, with concrete objects. Another was the opposite, to start big with broad insights about you. For this prompt, choose one of those strategies to try again here, or combine them both and answer some questions from each list on your screen. As usual with our brainstorming, you don't need to worry just yet about style or having the right number of items. You can start with a long list and narrow it down in a later drafting session. Use this time to answer the questions on the screen and explore and jot down ideas. Set a timer for 6 minutes and pause the video to brainstorm. Welcome back. You can run AI analysis to gauge your starting point, but it's fine if this prompt is challenging to you at this stage. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about supplemental essay prompts in general before getting back into how to approach lists and this specific prompt. We're spending today's lesson on supplemental essay prompts because you'll encounter a lot of specific prompts for different schools. Some will overlap with each other and require similar skills. Some overlap in form, while others are similar in content. There's the list, which is unique in format, and we'll get into in more detail shortly. Like I mentioned, Stanford includes a list prompt, as do a few other schools. Another specific format that also includes a common topic is to propose a class you would teach or a lecture you would give to demonstrate your particular interests and skills. You might need to propose readings or course materials and explain the main focus of the class, which will allow admissions officers to see something about your perspective on learning and the issues that you're interested in. Then, there are common supplemental topics that don't necessarily adhere to a particular format, but ask about a common topic. The first of these is extremely common. It asks you to explain why you're applying to a particular university or why you want to pursue your major. Some colleges will include both of these questions, and others will have one or the other. This type is a little tricky because you need to keep the focus on conveying information about you while still showing that you understand what that particular university offers and how you might want to use its specific opportunities. We'll talk about this type more in a future lesson. Other common topics overlap more with some of the prompts we've already worked on. One asks you to reflect on a challenge you faced, hardship you've overcome, or failure you've experienced. Different prompts might go about this in different ways, but ultimately, they all want to gain insight into how you learn and grow from tough experiences. Another common topic asks about your identity, beliefs, or values. These all ultimately want to know how you'll contribute to the university community and what unique perspective you'll bring to contribute to your class. They also allow for a lot of freedom. You might talk about identity in terms of your race, culture, or community, or you might choose to focus on the values you hold in the context of education or your chosen major. Since there's substantial overlap in the kinds of supplemental essays you'll need to write for different applications, a common question is, can I reuse the same supplemental essay for multiple schools? And if so, how? It can be tempting to avoid writing multiple similar essays, but it's important to make sure that your essay is appropriate for each specific context. When deciding if you can reuse your material, Ask a few questions. First, is the main focus of the prompt the same? Your writing just won't be as strong if you reuse a supplemental essay about, say, your values that you wrote for Princeton in a prompt for Duke that addresses your values but specifically wants you to focus on a time your beliefs were challenged and you faced disagreement. Your essay's main focus needs to clearly address the prompt. You also need to make sure that the genre, style, and format fit with the prompt, not just the topic. For example, we wrote an essay that took the form of a letter, which is similar to the Stanford roommate essay. Harvard also asks you a roommate question, but it wants a list of things about you, not a letter. So you might be able to reuse some of your material, but you need to make sure you edit to fit the right format and the right length for the essay. You might need to either cut material out or find additional details to add to make sure that your essay fits the word count for each school. Finally, you need to consider how the essay fits not just with the specific prompt, but also in the context of the rest of your application to each school. If you already have a different supplemental essay that covers a similar topic, remember the advice from a few lessons ago on using your essays to fill in the gaps in your application. Avoid repetition and overlap across supplemental essays on the same application in order to use each one to its maximum potential. In short, it's fine to reuse some of your anecdotes, perspectives, and the details you include in your essays, but it's never a good idea to fully copy and paste the exact same essay for multiple schools' supplemental essays because every application has slightly different parameters. It can be tedious, but it's always worth taking that extra time to tailor each supplemental essay to each specific school on your list. So let's get back to this particular supplement that we're working on with today's prompt. We're focusing on lists today because they're so different from the other types of essays you'll write. First, the style is really different. Instead of constructing paragraphs, your essay is organized by list items. And depending on how many words you have to work with, you might only be writing a single sentence or even a list of phrases with no complete sentences at all. Their brevity also separates lists from the other prompts that require a lot of explicit reflection and explanation. Many lists need to speak for themselves while still conveying some insight into who you are. So you still need to be able to articulate the meaning and insight from your list, which is what we'll work on today, in order to craft it to be compelling on its own without that explicit reflection. To write a strong list, start by using everything we've talked about in previous lessons, keeping the focus on you and the story you want to tell about yourself, filling in application gaps, being genuine, and keeping your writing specific and unique to you. Even with a really small word limit, you can use a list to demonstrate your personality and your writing voice, and you can still convey meaningful information about who you are. It's time to return to your draft with the goal to keep developing your list. We've talked about getting your reader's attention with a hook. Get your reader's attention in a slightly different way that will also help you figure out your list framing and how you're going to go about construction. And that's to focus on contrasts. If you're still stuck on the broadness of things in the prompt, pairing contrasting list items can help you approach that vagueness and capture some of the scope that this prompt allows to be profound and mundane, big and small, concrete and abstract, general and specific. So as you work on including these contrasting items on your list, try to also start adding some of that reflection to articulate why you're including each item. Why does it matter, and what does it convey about you? Set a timer for 6 minutes and pause the video to write. Welcome back from drafting. You can run AI analysis to see how you've improved so far. We'll get back to writing shortly, but first, let's look at a real essay example for this prompt. The difference here is that the Stanford version has a shorter word limit of only 50 words, so it doesn't include that explicit reflection from the second part of the prompt. The Stanford prompt is simply list 5 things that are important to you. So here's the essay. Talking and laughing with my family across dinner. The mental and physical reset I allow myself after achieving a challenging goal through determined efforts. Pursuing a topic down to its fundamental core. Blankets that are soft and big enough to cover all of me. Seeing someone smile, reaching their eyes. The first thing you might notice about this essay is that it really is just a list with no full sentences or explanations. So keeping that limited word count in mind, what do you think this essay does well? What do you think it could improve on? And what insight can you glean about this student from their list? Let's start with what the student does well here. They include interesting contrasts between specific and concrete items and general values, and they convey some of their personality through their choices. I especially like their final list item, which conveys their personality well, but it's not hyper-specific, so it still includes some of that broadness. But what could they improve? While the student does a good job with contrast, their most broad items could use some revision. The wordiness paired with the lack of specificity in the second item makes the list lose some of its oomph. And I think the student could have a more impactful, shorter word count here to get the same point across, while showing specifically what kinds of resets and what goals they're describing in that second item. Overall, though, this is an interesting list, and it gives us some insight into the student, who seems to really value connection with the people they care about, as well as their own intellectual curiosity and their ability to problem solve. Now that we've seen a real example of this essay, go ahead and return to your draft one last time to think about how to tie your list together. Start by considering what thread or threads connect your items, and what insight or multiple insights your reader can gain about you. This is something you don't need to express in your draft, but you do need to know the answer to this question as you edit your list to make it as compelling as possible. With editing your list in mind, I also want to pose an optional challenge during this drafting time. Can you convey your main insights without including that explicit reflection? Can you edit your draft to take out the second part of the prompt? If you do this, you might score a little lower on the AI analysis because it won't address the full prompt that's in the app. So keep that in mind if you choose to get AI feedback while working. But it'll still be good practice to see how you can tailor your draft to that specific Stanford prompt. If you choose not to remove your reflection, you can still use this time to continue honing your list items to paint a vivid picture of who you are. Set a timer for 6 minutes and pause the video to write. Welcome back from drafting. Go ahead and run AI analysis one last time to see how you've improved. I hope you've managed to come up with a list you're excited about, and that you enjoyed the way this prompt lets you flex your creative muscles a little. You can continue working on your draft until you're happy with your final version, and then submit it for my feedback. In our next class, we'll talk about another common supplemental essay type. Thanks for writing with me, and I'll see you next time.